Hello, I'm Linda from Scallywag Astrology, and I'm going to walk you through what's happening in September 2019 astrologically. So, for those that have been following me, I've been a little bit missing in action lately. I do apologise for that. I had a big house move and a few other things going on, but I'm back now. So, let's dive into it. Okay, so this is the chart. It's for the 1st of September. I've got it set for Chicago, Illinois time, simply because it's just in the middle of America and a lot of my followers are American. Over here, if you can see it, I have the symbols or the glyphs and which ones relate to which planets. Also the same for the signs, and over here I have them for what we call the aspects. The aspects are geometrical differences. When you have certain geometrical differences, they tend to bring a certain energy with them. When you have planets close together, like here, we have the Sun and Mars at 8 degrees. That's called a conjunction, and that tends to lead a blending of the energies. When you have planets 180 degrees apart or opposite each other, it's called an opposition. When they're 90 degrees apart, we call it a square. As I work through this chart and go through the month, you'll see these lines changing. And the red ones tend to be like a warning sign. The opposition and square are considered hard aspects. But having said that, while they can be challenging and bring tension with them, we sometimes need to be made uncomfortable before we'll move. So sometimes we just need a nudge, and sometimes it takes an opposition or a square to do so. The trine and the sextile are considered soft aspects. They tend to bring ease and they tend to be helpful. The planets involved will tend to work well together. So the 1st of September is a Sunday, and we start off, we've got Mars and the Sun here. Sun is about ourselves and Mars is energy. So most of us will probably feel quite energetic. We might feel quite driven because Mars can also be ambition and drive. We might be quite physical. We might enjoy doing something, physical, going hiking, some sport. Some of us might become a little bit more tetchy, a little bit more angry, because Mars can also be aggression. And then it's also libido, so there is that as well. Particularly, it's not super close to Venus at the moment, but what's that, 8 to 13, 5 degrees away. It's not super far away either. We have Mercury over here at 5 degrees of Virgo, which is communications, learning, and thinking. It's in the sign of Virgo. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so it's a comfortable position for Mercury. And it's trining, which is helpful, Uranus over here. Uranus is the unexpected, it's unusual, it's innovative. It can be a little bit shocking and even revolutionary, but this is a trine, so it's bound to be helpful. So it's more likely to manifest as out-of-the-box thinking, innovative thoughts. It's a nice aspect, and particularly we're all revved up already. It should be quite an interesting day. And then we have Venus here at 13 degrees of Virgo, trining Saturn over here. Saturn is restrictions, responsibility. It's a little bit plotting. It's kind of taking your time, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It is a trine though, so it's nice. This, for some people, could lead to a deepening of commitment of some sort of relationship. If you've recently started dating someone, maybe you'll decide to be exclusive, or some people might be moving in together or deciding to marry or have children. On the 2nd, we have a continuation of Venus trining Saturn, so that continues on into Monday. We also have, though, it's creeping up to square Jupiter over here. So the square is challenging. Venus is values. So although we're talking about commitment, we're feeling secure and validated, Jupiter over here is kind of a bit of a fly in the ointment. Jupiter is considered the lucky planet. It's expansive, it's generous, it's associated with good luck. But as with any planet, there's the good and the bad qualities, and Jupiter can go a little bit overboard. So we need to just kind of watch this, because Venus is, on one hand, trining Saturn. It's feeling good, it's feeling valued, it's feeling safe. Maybe for some people that's going to feel a little bit too safe, and maybe they're going to kind of want a little bit of freedom, particularly because Sagittarius is a freedom-loving sign. But just watch this. There's a tendency to go a little bit overboard. Maybe you met somebody, maybe they're suggesting you be exclusive and you're planning the wedding. You know, there's an element here of going overboard. We also have here the moon squaring Pluto. I'm not going to go into too much with the moon. The moon is our emotions, which are, of course, very important, but the moon moves very quickly around the chart. The moon can move about 12 degrees a day, and there's 30 degrees to a sign, so it takes about 2.5 days for the moon to travel through one sign. So in a month, the moon will move around most of this chart, whereas a planet like Pluto, I don't know if Pluto is still a planet, but I'm going to call it a planet. But Pluto, I doubt that it's even going to budge from 20 degrees Capricorn here, because it moves so slowly. So let's move on to the 3rd, which is Tuesday. We have Venus squaring Jupiter still. Venus is at 16 degrees, so it's almost past this aspect. It's moved on from the trine it had to Saturn. It's still squaring Jupiter, but it's moving past that. There may be still maybe a little bit of cold feet going on, perhaps, for some people in relationships. So on the 4th, we have the Sun and Mercury conjunct at 11 degrees. So a lot of thinking going on the 4th, on the Wednesday. We have Venus here, which will be opposing Neptune. Venus has been pretty busy in this chart. First off, it was trining Saturn, then it was squaring Jupiter, and now it's opposing Neptune. Neptune is very idealistic. Some people call it the higher octave of Venus. So there may be some similarities to it, but while Venus is values and affections, and it's often related to relationships and, you know, what we want in relationships, how we want to be wooed and that, Neptune is very idealistic. It can be spiritual, but Neptune is also kind of smoke and mirrors. It's very glamorous, but it's not always what you see is what you get. So it's a little bit murky there. So we've had Venus with that sturdiness, that security, then maybe a little bit of cold feet, and now maybe we're kind of not seeing things clearly, because when you see Neptune, you need to ask yourself, what are you not seeing? Then we move on to the 5th. We have Mercury coming up to trine Saturn. So good, logical, rational thinking, particularly in these two signs, Capricorn, and Saturn is in, Saturn rules Capricorn, so it's a sign position it's happy with, and Mercury rules Virgo. So both these signs are in good standing and they're working well together. They're trining. So good, rational, logical thinking. Perhaps, you know, after all this daydreaming and this Jupiter over here kind of stirring the pot a little bit, things will settle down a bit. On the 6th, we have Mercury going on to square the moon, which isn't so significant, but it also squares Jupiter. At the time, the moon and Jupiter will be conjunct. As I said, the moon is emotions, so that generosity, that expansive spirit is kind of tied up with our emotions at that time, and it's not working well with our communications. We may be caught up in our own belief system, in believing that what we believe, what we think is right, because Jupiter can be a little bit know-it-all too. It can be a little bit dismissive of other people's opinions at times too. And that Mercury squaring it is not a good sign. So that is the Friday the 6th. There could be some issues with some people, having problems with other people that don't agree with them. We have the Sun coming up to trine Saturn, so some sanity will prevail, so that's good. On the 7th, we have Mercury coming up against Neptune. Now, as I said before, Neptune, what are we not seeing? And in this case, because it's being opposed by Mercury here, we need to ask ourselves, don't believe everything you hear, because it might not be the actual truth. We have the Sun still trining Saturn, so we're feeling we're willing to put in the hard work and do all that stuff. We have Venus coming up to trine Pluto, which is kind of very interesting. Values and affections, trining Pluto, which is quite deep and intense. A lot of powerful moments going on, quite for romantic situations that can be quite deep and meaningful. And Pluto tends to bring a little bit of obsession and kind of depth and just, obsession and depth. And if you like that sort of thing, the 7th should be quite nice. On the 8th, we have the Sun coming up to square Jupiter. We still have Mars. Well, actually, Mars has moved up to trine Saturn. So Mars is energy. It's working well with Saturn, which is discipline. We previously had the Sun, which was the ego or ourselves. So the previous day we were thinking about, yes, we're going to do this. It looks like on Sunday we're actually going to do it. We're going to physically do it. We're going to put that energy into it. But the Sun kind of comes up against Jupiter here. So while all this is going on, Jupiter, I kind of get the impression he's just leading people astray for most of this month, actually. He's just he's a great planet, don't get me wrong, but he just looks like he's kind of just leading people astray. I think maybe later in the month, he actually gets some trines or sextiles, so that'll tame things down. But I find, particularly with my own chart, Jupiter can really inflame a situation. So that's the 8th. On the 9th, we have Mercury, our thinking, trining Pluto, powerful thinking, which is nice. We have Mars just moving past that trine to Saturn. So we're still working hard. We're putting in the physical effort. And Mercury is just past trining. So that powerful thinking. For the 10th, we have the Sun come up to oppose Neptune. Neptune, what are we not seeing? And as this is the Sun that's opposing it, which is ourselves, what are we not seeing about ourselves? We might have some blind spot at this time. We also have Mars still trining, though almost out of what we call orb. We have Mars still trining Saturn. You can see here that Saturn is at 13 degrees 57. This second number refers to minutes. So it's 3 minutes from switching over to 14 degrees. And Mars here is at 14 degrees 41. So it's very close to moving out of that aspect, because I allow a degree either side for these aspects. But yes, on Tuesday the 10th, we might have some trouble seeing ourselves clearly. And Mars and Saturn are working quite hard. Maybe we've been doing a lot of hard work, but maybe we're not as hardworking as we think we've been. Maybe others won't agree with it. The 11th, we still have that Sun opposing Neptune in effect. We have Mars coming in to square Jupiter. So not only are we having trouble seeing ourselves clearly on the 11th, we also have Mars and Jupiter here kind of causing friction. Mars is impatient, it can be aggressive and quite blunt, and Jupiter is kind of prone to going overboard at times, so we might get caught up in our own egos on the 11th. So that's something to watch out for. On the 12th, we have Mars and Jupiter. Jupiter's moved forward to 16 degrees here. So it's still within degree though. It's only 2 minutes away from each other. So it's still quite a close square. People might be a bit touchy. And then we're coming up to the full moon on the 13th. I'm just going to move this forward. Okay, so on the 13th, we have the full moon, which is when the moon and the sun are 180 degrees apart. So you have the moon up here at 21 degrees Pisces, and you have the sun at 21 degrees Virgo. So at the time, we will have, interesting, at the same time that this opposition is going on, we will have Venus and Mercury, which is values and affections and communications and learning, both at 29 degrees of Virgo. So they'll be very close to moving into the sign of Libra. When a planet is at 29 degrees, it's sometimes, well, it's called a critical degree, because it's so close to leaving one sign and entering another. There can be a sense of urgency to planets in that degree. So we might be feeling a need to get a message across because we're talking about Mercury. It may also be in relation to our affections or our values. And that, there's nothing else at 29, but we still have Mars here squaring Jupiter. And Mars can be, as we said before, a little bit aggressive, and Jupiter can be a little bit intolerant of other people's opinions at times. So it's something to watch out for. We can be so driven to kind of get our point across, get our values across, and because Jupiter is also about things like values and morals and, beliefs. So it's interesting. Pisces, which the moon is in at the full moon, is a water sign, so it tends to be quite emotional anyway. And then you have the sun in Virgo, which is an earth sign ruled by Mercury. So a little bit of dichotomy there. They are both mutable though, so there is some give and take. If it was fixed signs we were talking about, it would be a lot more rigid, but both Pisces and Virgo are mutable signs, so there is some hope there. We also have Pluto, which is power, honesty, and depth. it will have just, the moon, before it goes on to oppose the sun, will have just sextiled Pluto. So emotionally, we'll be feeling quite powerful. Before that, it will have just passed over Neptune. So we may be a little bit deluded about, our emotions. Then we kind of start feeling quite powerful. And while this is going on, we feel this urgency to get the message across. And, but we may be a little bit too belligerent about it. So it's something to be aware of with the full moon on the 13th. I'm going to move this back to days. On the 14th, we have Jupiter going on to square Neptune. Jupiter, as we've been talking about, has been stirring the pot a bit, and now it might be actually egging on Neptune here, who can be a little bit deceptive or a little bit elusive. Mars here is actually squaring Neptune at the moment, at that time. So don't, before flying off the handle, which is Mars, be sure that you are actually in receipt of all the facts, because you probably aren't aware of everything that's going on. And Jupiter here is just kind of fanning the flames, really. On the 15th, we have a continuation of that Jupiter and Neptune energy square. Mars has moved on from opposing it, though, so that's something. And we have Mercury and Venus in the early degrees of Libra. So that's going to make us a little bit more charming and agreeable, because Libra likes harmony and balance. On the 16th, which is a Monday, we continue with that. It's must be getting close. No, it's quite a way. It's going to be there for a while yet. What a pain. Be a few more days before we'll get past that Jupiter and Neptune square. On the 17th, we have Mars at 19 degrees coming in to trine Pluto. So drive, ambition, energy, feeling powerful, working well with Pluto over here. So as long as we, don't let our ideas kind of get inflated and believe our own publicity, that should work well. On the 18th, we have continuation. We see that Mars has moved up to 20, so it's perfecting that aspect. So that's a continuation of, putting that energy to good use, to powerful use, to use it for good. You can see here that the moon comes along and trines Pluto at the same time. So we're feeling emotionally good about that as well. But still, we have Jupiter and Neptune just stirring the pot, causing this fogginess. Just things are not necessarily what they seem. On the 19th, still have the same configurations. Mars is getting close to moving away from that now. On the 20th, Mars is just getting past, it's 2139 here. You can see it's 2040 here, so it's almost moving away from that trine. So that's Mars. That's waning energy of the energy, feeling quite powerful. Moon being opposed by Jupiter over here and Neptune. So you can see here we have the T square. Jupiter, that enthusiasm, enthusiasm and generosity, but also going overboard, being challenged. It's causing some challenge for our emotions, and we have Neptune up here kind of clouding the water. On the 21st, continuation of Jupiter and Neptune. the moon comes along here and squares the sun, which, that'll move pretty quickly, so that's not that much to bother with. Here we have Mercury, communications, thinking and learning, will be challenged by, will be squaring Saturn. So it could be a case of lazy thinking. Saturn wants, discipline, it wants consistency, it wants dedication, it wants you to knuckle down and do the work. Mercury here is squaring it. It's just not working well with it. It's in the sign of Libra. It wants to think about lovely things. Venus is here as well. It just wants to have fun. And I suspect that a lot of people will be daydreaming. Very much a daydreaming thing here. Daydreaming, and that's okay as long as you don't take yourself too seriously. 22nd. Again, Jupiter and Neptune continues. We have continuation of Mercury almost past Saturn, but it's still in effect. And then you have the moon challenging Saturn. We might feel a little bit hard done by. We've got this taskmaster on our back, demanding that we do this serious thinking. We don't want to do this serious thinking. Emotionally, we're not up for it. We just don't want to deal with it. We want to daydream big ideas. The 23rd, we have Mercury sextiling, which is helpful, Jupiter. So maybe we're starting to settle down a little bit by the 23rd and have some more practical application of these ideas. So they should work well together. They will work well together, but we still need to be aware that Neptune is, it's still there. It's still squaring or being squared by Jupiter, but we're getting a little bit more practical, a bit more feet on the ground. And the 24th, we have Venus squaring Saturn, a little bit of trouble in paradise for some perhaps, with Venus often being related to relationships and Saturn being restrictions and discipline. We have Mercury and Jupiter still working well together though. And we have the sun has just come into the sign of Libra, which is very much about relationships. On the 25th, we have a continuation of Venus and Saturn, and that square there. So it could be conflict of values, or, feeling a little bit hemmed in perhaps by relationships or somebody's values. We also have Jupiter, freedom-loving Jupiter, and Neptune stirring the pot. On the 26th, a continuation again. On the 27th, we have Venus coming up to sextile Jupiter. So we've had thinking. We started to get to a little bit more practical thinking just a couple of days ago when Mercury sextiled Jupiter, but now we have Venus, our values, and that is sextiling Jupiter, which is nice. Still that Neptune up there though to be aware of. On the 28th, well, look at that. They finally separated. So what's that? The 28th. So I'm not sure when that started. I'll have to go back and have a look. But that was a longer transit and it was a little bit troublesome. But we have Venus here at 18 degrees, still sextile Jupiter. What else do we have here? Everything else looks pretty good. The 29th, not a real lot going on. No real close conjunctions too. We have the moon that will come over, Venus, and then Mercury during that time. So it's a nice kind of happy sign. It's in the sign of Libra, so it's a nice harmonious sign. Venus is actually the ruler of Libra, so it's comfortable there. Mercury in Libra is charming and likes to socialize and that, so that's just a nice day, nothing major going on. And then we come to the 30th, where we have Venus squaring Pluto. Again, it can be a little bit challenging. Another deep and meaningful day for people in relationships, perhaps. But yes, so that is September. I will probably, on the Scallywag Astrology Facebook page and Facebook group, for the week, I'll go through what to expect and that. But apart from that, that's your September horoscope, and I will see you next month. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to share or like or subscribe, and have a great month. So thank you. Bye.